4 o'clock by my watch, actually 4:01. So I would like to start this meeting of our special session here in December. The 6th of December, we're going to go over a number of items. So let's first start out with our roll call.
Councilmember Holland,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Councilmember DeGolia,
Yes.
and Mayor Whitmer.
I'm here.
And I'll
Okay,
note-
thank you.
And I'll note for the record that Vice Mayor Hawkins will be joining us remotely, and the council will need to vote to accept her
All right, will
participation.
you let us know when she is here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, next is public comments. So we'll take any public comments on items that are directly affected to this topic or these several topics. And also that pertain to things that the town has control over. So we can't stop the war and, wherever. Okay, so are there any public comments either here or online? I don't see any in the room. Do you see any online? Okay, I'm going to close public comments. You'll have a chance to say something about each of the items as we come to those. Okay, the next item is a proclamation. We have a proclamation for Betsy Glickbarg, so you need to come up. Well, we'll go over to this stand.
That's good.
It would be better if we can get her on camera over here.
All right.
Great.
Fine.
That's what matters.
You can use this.
Okay, you need to walk all the way up here. Sorry.
You're gonna stand in front of everybody.
We're gonna stand here. where we can get
Come
the
around.
seal and everything.
That way we can get you on camera.
All right, run up here with Tom. Okay.
A logo.
Okay, you here or what?
We have.
Okay.
What? I'm here.
All right, okay, so this proclamation is in recognition of Betsy Glickbarg's 50 years of service as chair of the Menlo Charity Horse Show. So whereas the Menlo Charity Horse Show began 50 years ago with Betsy Glickbarg co-chairing, and whereas the Menlo Charity Show was so successful that the Menlo Circus Club directed it to continue on an annual basis. And whereas under Betsy's leadership and support of many others, the Menlo Charity Horse Show, which began as a way to raise funds to repair the stables, was so successful it grew to national prominence. And whereas the Menlo Charity Horse Show has attained national recognition, becoming the United States Equestrian Federation Heritage Horse Show. And whereas the Menlo Charity Horse Show has been inducted into the National Horse Show Hall of Fame and funded the refurbishment of the Equestrian Center at the Circus Club. And whereas the proceeds of the show now go to assist the Visitor Center for the blind and visually impaired. And whereas the club has recently dedicated the Equestrian Center and barn to Betsy for her continued devotion and work on the annual horse show. And I don't know if you're continuing or not, but let's not make an announcement here. From inception all the way through the 50 years of service. So now therefore, as mayor of the city of Atherton, or town of Atherton, and on behalf of the whole council, I recognize the outstanding citizen of Atherton, Elizabeth Betsy Glickbarg, for her tireless work in organizing this event and bringing thousands and thousands of visitors from around the world to our great town. So thank you, Betsy, for your service. This is for you.
I could just say a couple of things.
You say what
Wait a minute.
things?
You don't have a long meeting today?
No, we don't.
You get to say anything you want.
Thank you. That's my neighbor. I just want to say, which I always say, is no one person plays a symphony. It takes an entire orchestra. And when I started the show, I hate to say 50 years ago, we had a small committee of 3, which it now has over 100 people working on that committee. And it's always been for the blind and visually impaired. And if you can think of any challenge that is much worse than being blind, I don't know what it is. So the horse show will continue, and it will continue to be for the blind and visually impaired. And I thank everybody here for coming to honor me. This is quite an honor. So I thank you, Mayor.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Yeah.
And I can attest that this proclamation doesn't do justice to Betsy. I watch the work she does. She is tireless. And every year, she's completely committed, absolutely tireless in her work. It's a great contribution to the
That's
town.
because you see all the trucks coming in, Rick.
That's correct.
I'm gonna be a little photographer's assistant. I want you to hold this with the mayor together and we'll get this out of your way.
As I say to my children, you have to pretend you like me.
Great at this, so let me take a couple of them. I want to make sure. I got it.
This is definitely an honor, and I thank everybody who took part in it.
Well deserved.
You are an inspiration.
Oh, I'm not an inspiration. Somebody said to me, you did the horse show for 50 years. Are you crazy? And I said, those are 2 questions. Yes and yes.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here and honoring me. This is really very special.
No problem. We have other things to do though, and you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to stay, okay?
Only Bill would do that to me.
For those of you who don't know where
Thank
the
you.
Vista Vision Center, it's down El Camino, right before you get to Page Mill on the right-hand side going south. And it's open to anybody. Well, to get services and equipment from them, all you need to do is get your doctor's prescription and they'll handle it. If you just want to go down and get an assessment and they'll show you what they can do, you can go down there for nothing, okay? So it's a great operation. And if you know somebody who has macular degeneration or some other vision issue, please make sure that they know that that's there and it's available to them. So thank you. Okay, there's yours. Okay. Diana on yet? Okay, so number 1 of the action items, we have Mademoiselle Colette Deborah here to talk about her issue with regards to the costs associated with getting Mademoiselle Colette's up and operating, and also some of the delays she experienced, which then have put her into an opening during the cold and rainy season. So there is a staff report. Does anybody have any questions on the staff report? No? Okay. So seeing, yes or no?
I said it's very straightforward.
Okay.
Yes.
So would you like to say a few words?
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Mademoiselle Colette was supposed to be open 1 year ago. And like you all know, because I was here a year ago, we have a lot of troubles found a contractor and everything, and things take much longer than I was expecting. Okay, I was expecting to open almost a year ago. And second, the cost of the work, it was $100,000 more than it was in the budget. And it's not finished because I still having the sneeze glass and other things, a lot of shelves and a lot of things that are not installed. Donc, I'm coming here today to ask if you can maybe help me a little bit with the extension of the lease. And my proposition is if I can start to pay the lease on March or April. Just to give me some time to start things running and smooth and have the good weather back. Just I have some numbers here to you. I was expecting for the first year to have $450,000. Today, with the sales that you've been having since the opening, I think I will be minus 100K from the projections. Knowing that I have 100K more expenses, this is a gap in 200K in my business plan. On October, we have the sales were really dropping. You know, I compared the first days of October, November, and December, and I have 6,900 in October, 6,400 in November, and 3,500 in December. And this month, it was cutting by 2 the sales. I was expecting that this place will be slowly to coming back, but the fact that I opened in the very near to the bad weather, it's really make the things harder. Okay, I hope you've taken this in account. But I'm very confident because I think that the space is amazing. I only have positive feedback. The clients are very happy. And it's just, I think it's taking a little bit more time that I was expecting. And I think you have a lot of questions to me regarding the Liker's license or other questions. Just about the Liker's license, I've been fighting with ABC since the opening because they want seats inside. And it's, I need to take my black cabinet there outside to take this out in order to put one seat. And I think I will be doing this to have the license, but it's, I'm afraid because it's not compatible. If a health department come, you see it's too small to have seats. But Liker's license want a seat. Okay, I don't know if you have some weight or can help me with them, or if I need to continue to try to negotiate. But today, everything is approved, everything is okay, but they want one seat inside.
That's all the license allowed you?
Yeah, they want a seat.
That's all they want, require at least.
Require,
one
yes.
minimum, One seat.
But they don't told me, of course, not before. They told me after the opening that we need to have we need to close the terrace. I told them this is not possible to close all the terrace, but I'm trying to find a way to have one table with a stool inside.
I assume you have a counter where you have sales of items.
Yes, exactly.
Could you put counter seats?
I can't, but the thing is that if I do this, I need to have 3 feet between the counter and the things. It's a puzzle that I cannot resolve. What I'm planning to do is to put a seat there, have my permit, and after we figure out what we do. But this what is holding me back is the city situation.
Can you get that amended with the health department? So that they can sit inside, but they can't leave the terrace?
It's make no sense, you know. It's always one you know, it's ABC have the rules, health department have the rules, and they are not connected. Look, I think yes, you.
I was gonna say, if the requirement is one seat, then I would just put a seat in there.
It's
Just a chair.
what I'm thinking. It's
And-
just that if
and-
I need to move everything out.
And you could put a child's chair. I mean, you could put a small chair. It would be a seat.
It's true, yeah.
No, but if the requirement, I don't know what the rule is, the way it's stated in your authorization, but if it says that one seat, you could definitely put a seat in there.
It's what
I have a very small seat for a child. That I'm sure
I
they're,
will-
and they do at the library too.
I will try and see what's
Well,
happened.
how
But
about a
this
s-
is my
a
plan for
stool?
ABC because
Know
I've
what they
been fighting
require.
with them for 2 months and we are not going. Anywhere.
I have a question, which is, how is it looking for you with the hours in the winter?
Right. I keep for now the same hours, but do you have any requirements or suggestion? What's the question about?
I mean,
hours?
we want to be flexible with you. We want you to succeed, so.
My problem today is that with my sales, okay, normally in the food industry, the payroll is supposed to be around the maximum 28% of the sales. Today here, I'm 35 to 50% of my sales on payroll because of, we need always EDD and I need to have 2 people in certain hours because one need to have 10 minutes break, lunch break. Okay, I always need to have 2 people at certain time. It's ridiculous because it's my payroll is so high here compared to the sales. But I believe that when the good weathers will come back, I have a lot of plans and I'm very excited. I think we can have live musics and, concert small things and a violin in the night with drinks, things that can make things more,
So I have a question.
yes.
And I guess it's to council and to staff, would it be possible in any way, shape or form to access the program room, the library program room, or a portion of it?
Right, so that's currently dedicated library space for programming, but it's open most of the time. I don't think the library programs it a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I think if the council was open to it and she worked with Tomika over at the library to coordinate when she could use it versus when they have programs and then have program priority versus her priority.
Well, I'm thinking that, most people wouldn't have wine until the afternoon or,
Yeah.
So maybe a couple of hours or something in the afternoons for,
Right.
open it up for
Right.
the wine service, or I don't know, you wouldn't have wine first thing in the morning, would you?
Do you think
And
we
maybe.
can for the
Anything's
for the
possible.
license? Do you think I can tell them that I can put 2 tables there because I think they will be okay.
Right,
They
that's
just
the
want
other thing we're.
Yeah, but they
just
can't
want
walk.
1 seat.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
is somewhere in the lease authorizing use of that space.
Yes.
Yeah,
To them, and that might satisfy.
yes.
yeah,
ABC.
because I
That
don't
would
think
be a
that they
real
want
good
that
solution.
you to pick up the wine or the beer and go
walk
directly
around.
to a seat
Yeah.
without going outside. That may be the problem.
Could be,
And so,
No, that's not
No.
outside the problem.
unless it's roped off. The outside could be roped off or something, but I think if we coordinate. with them-
Please, wait a minute, look
Places
for
sell
Roni's.
Alcohol need to
Yeah.
have
What?
one. it
Wait a
says
minute,
it's,
look-
uh,
Look at
indoor
Baroni's. They have indoor seating, but you take the wine from the kitchen and you bring it out
I-
to the
Is
outdoor
the
patio.
seat specific
they also have
to
indoor.
the liquor license?
Yeah, it's very weird. And I don't understand why you need to have 1 seat,
Mhm.
but.
Well,
I
a
see.
But if
minimum.
the council.
So a child seat doesn't work.
Using that space or.
Well, I
use of
am.
that space.
Yeah,
we can
I
kind
was
of-
thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I
I
think
thought
we
it
could
was a
work
good
that out.
idea. and-
Especially for inclement weather, I
Yeah.
mean, like, pouring down rain or really cold.
I think
but-
that's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
Well, I do too. But don't we have some space heaters out there now or no?
do.
I don't know.
We do.
Space heaters are available to,
Yeah.
yeah.
But still, and it's dark. And so I think the flexibility of having hours for you, during this winter time and inclement weather, I think the council would definitely be, at least I would, supportive of that. And then if we can talk to the library about
Yeah.
maybe accessing, especially to comply with the liquor license.
We'll work that out.
And I just purchased 5 heaters, so we'll be having next week a lot of heaters there. So I think
That's
this will
nice.
help a little bit.
That's
Yeah.
nice. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, then the other issue is when to adjust the lease. So I heard you say March or April. Personally, it's up for everybody else, but I would say April is a better time. It's starting to get warm. The last rains have come for the most part in March, and that's when as it's warming up, that's when more and more people are gonna be out walking around. I don't know what
The rent was supposed to begin July first. I would propose that we modify the lease to have the rent start July first of 2024.
I agree with that.
Wow, this
It's
is
like
generous.
1 year.
1 year.
Look, in.
It took a
real
long
estate,
time to get it done.
I'm telling you, it's so typical in commercial real estate. No, for me, it
I
is.
just wanna let you guys know Councilman Hawkins joined online. so-
Oh, she did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
If she's allowed
So
to
I'd make a
participate.
motion to that effect.
I'll second that.
all right, take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, anybody opposed? No. Okay,
And we're gonna work about the seating for. the-
yeah, work
Yeah.
with George.
I haven't said anything yet.
Much, I really
Can I-
appreciate
Oh,
it.
yeah,
comment?
sorry.
Really, I mean, I'm totally down with this July thing, but I would recommend, I mean, you're in an amazing location with the library. So I think it'd be a great opportunity to work with them on some, if you're gonna use that space, some programming. They're doing adult literacy. They're doing a lot of more senior focused events now that you could be partnering with them. In some way, I don't know how the library is allowed to partner with private businesses and alcohol, but I would love for you guys to like get more integrated with the library, for you both to, for their programs to succeed and for your business to
Yes, and
succeed.
I'm working with my catering team to have a more affordable menu for events here, because I know that it can be quite expensive.
Mhm.
We do everything from scratch. I import my butter from France. Everything is, it's a very costly
That's why it's so good.
product, what we do. But I'm working in some items and some propositions that are a little bit more affordable to be able to work with the city and the library.
Cool.
Yeah,
Great.
it would also be
That's just
good
when
if on,
it's so good. you
on
know, it's high
Wednesday,
quality.
the first and third Wednesday night, especially the first Wednesday
Yeah.
of the night, if you stay open until, about 6:30. So when we adjourn, we can go over there.
I
Or-
love
or,
the idea.
Council special, happy
At
hour.
least, yeah, 6 o'clock, so we can get something before we.
Yeah,
It makes more sense once it's warm.
yeah.
Yes, it does.
So,
Like a monthly.
Rec-
Okay.
recognizing the council's already voted and moved forward on it, just for the benefit of the council member, the vice mayor that just came online, that you're going to vote in a second. We've already cleared this item, but the motion is to authorize the city attorney to prepare a city manager to execute amendments to the lease to extend the term of rent waiver through July 1, 2024
To July,
to July 1,
not through.
to July 1, 2024. Coordinate and assist with the liquor license to the extent possible, coordinate use of the space in the community room with the library, and see what we need to do to work into the lease to
Yeah.
make those things happen.
That's it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Got that?
All right,
So,
We passed that.
yeah, so we have.
Thank you, Deborah.
Before we move
Thank you
on
so
to,
much.
thank you for
Okay.
coming, Dave.
Very welcome.
Now,
So now, before we move on to item number 2, the vice mayor has joined us, and she would like to make a request that we approve her full participation in the meeting per the state law allowing her to do so with regards to meeting one of the criteria since she has COVID.
Oh, gosh.
So Diana, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, just
Make your
like,
request?
yeah, can you guys hear me?
Bye-bye.
bye, bye, Deborah.
I just want to request that if I could join the meeting. I'm on day 11 of quarantine with COVID. I'm no longer testing positive, but I still have a sinus infection. So I'm asking if I can join the meeting remotely.
Okay, we have to vote on it, but anybody opposed to it, let's say that.
Nope.
No,
See,
Thank you for
nobody's
staying away.
opposed to it, so the answer is yes.
Thank
Approved.
please join.
Thank you for not.
Thank you for
infecting us.
dialing in.
I have a question. Is the state exception limited to 2 times in a year?
yes.
Year. So,
Is this the first year? Or is it the year since it went into effect or what?
It's 2 times, it's just 2 times per calendar year.
Okay, so it starts again in January.
Yeah.
All right, great.
we got one more meeting.
But you
Right?
can always participate.
Well, this is
virtually
her
as long as
second
you
time,
please.
No, it's not my second time. Stacy was the one who called in before.
I was sick before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't me. I know everyone gets me confused with her, but yeah.
I
Two
called him
blondes.
once as well. I'm
Oh,
making
God,
maximum use of
men.
this. Okay. Item number 2 is looking at the proposed fee increases and those, we hired an outside firm to look at what other people are charging and also look at what our total costs are. And this item, once they collect input, will then come back for formal review in either January or February, probably January. So, George, are you taking over on this one?
No, actually, this is going to be Robert
Oh.
and Dan from Capital and County Partners.
Okay. Robert, you don't have any PowerPoints, do you?
Not me. But thank you, Mayor, Council, members of the public. See yours. Sorry about that. Just today's presentation is a presentation review discussion of the user fee study cost allocation and if appropriate, provide direction on the master fee schedule. You have the staff report before you. And within the staff report, council, letting council know, we performed our last fee study, user fee study in 2013. And with the staff report, we mentioned that we attempted to do one in 2018. However, with the construction of the town center, we felt it would be appropriate to wait till the cost of the construction and operation costs are fully realized and to perform a user fee study. So we performed user fee study. We met with staff, performed analysis of the processes in place for our community development departments, which includes planning, building, engineering, and also police department as well. Review the user fee schedule. Dan Eds of Capital County Partners is here today to discuss that. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and then we will go over and discuss any questions the council may have. One thing I want to reiterate, within the staff report, there were some sample fees that were presented for the different departments of planning, building, and engineering. There were samples of the fees that were in the appendices of the report. And there was discussion about cost recovery within the user fee study. Those that are presented here, they're at user costs 100% cost recovery. And there were samples in there explaining that there could be a cost recovery metrics or tier system set up based off of low, medium, high on certain fees. So staff wanted to discuss that just to know that, let the council know that there's the avenues for addressing cost recoveries for the town community service departments. Again, and the major focus was on the planning, building department, and engineering fees within the staff report. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Eds from Capital County Partners.
Great, thanks, Robert. And are you controlling the?
Yeah, as soon as you're ready. Yeah,
Okay,
just let us
all
know.
right. So just say next slide.
Yep.
Someone's gonna have the magic. All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Dan Eds with Capital County Partners. And just before I begin formally, I just want to acknowledge you have a gorgeous new campus here. I was here 10, 11 years ago. And when I walked in the door, I thought, this is really nice. I've been in a lot of city council offices, city halls. A handful are palatial. They range from there all the way down to double white trailers. And
Is what
this
we
just
had.
seems like a beautiful campus that fits well within the environment of the city town of Atherton. And it's functional, it's beautiful, and I hope it provides you with excellent services for many, many years to come.
We can move across the way if you'd be more comfortable
The
in the old
historic.
council chamber.
They were nice, but the city campus,
That was a
But
nice
Memphis
thing to say.
Colette's gonna take over.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, there might be beer and wine in there.
At some point.
I got here a little while ago and I went over and I got a delightful cup of coffee. I went to the library, I did some work. It was a relaxing environment. I got my work done. And I don't think I've ever found a coffee shop on a city hall campus.
Oh, wow.
So
That's really nice.
I just, I think when I would think. the
Always
first time
breaking the
I was
glass
here
ceiling, aren't we?
In the spring of the Robert, this is really nice. So anyway, with that, let me also acknowledge this Robert and for the work that he did in supporting me in as well as my partner in doing this project. He was just spot on, delightful. These projects are data rich and he was always sensitive to our needs, as well as the rest of the staff, this other Robert, as well as the new planning staff and building department. I am frequently a little bit embarrassed about having to ask busy people to sit down with me for an hour or two or three and let me pick their brains and go through a process that's pretty intensive. And everybody was just very, very cooperative and helpful, and just couldn't be happier with with this whole process. I have a place at the very end for questions. I also have several spots in the middle of this presentation where I will specifically ask if there are any questions, but in between time, thank you, Robert. Do not be afraid to ask if there's a question. Just stop me and I'll be happy to respond. Someone's already ahead of me. So there's three components to the project. The first piece was what we call a full cost indirect cost allocation plan. The second major component was a fully loaded productive hourly rate calculation for staff in each contract position. Third was to calculate the full cost of each user fee and also conduct a comparison study of full cost of Atherton's fees with several benchmark cities. This particular presentation is going to really focus on point number one, the full cost indirect cost allocation plan. I'm using the term full cost because that actually has a different component to a different kind of cost allocation plan, although the process is identically the same. One is a cost allocation plan that would be used by the federal government, not exactly what we're doing here. And then I'll be talking specifically about building planning engineering fees because those are the largest components of cost. And typically, if there's going to be any controversy, this is where it's going to be. And also, this is in terms of fees, this is the most forward-facing, these are the most forward-facing services of the town. And so this just creates a lot of opportunity for conversation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the background of an indirect cost allocation plan is pretty simple. The way we do these plans is actually authorized and designed by the federal government. When we are allocating overhead costs, the federal government says there are specific costs that you can include, costs that you can't exclude, and there's specific methodologies that they define as how to allocate those costs. This is a very different kind of program where you might have in a commercial organization where hypothetically administrative staff or financial staff would say, well, 25% of the total cost is administration, and they just apply that blanket number to everybody. It's not the way the federal government asks us to do these things. It also provides a consistent methodology of assigning overhead costs, and it's a methodology that's used both by the federal government, but also for cities and counties and states. So bottom line there is that the indirect cost allocation plan is really designed to assign overhead in a methodical, thoughtful way that complies with other governments throughout the country. Next slide, please.
And defensible.
Sorry?
And defensible.
And defensible. Good work. As you can see from this slide, what we are really trying to do, and I'll just use finance since I've got Robert sitting here next to me. I'll just use finance as an example. So as I mentioned, a commercial organization would be perfectly acceptable to say finance represents 10% of the total cost, and you just take this 10% and apply it across the board to all of what we call the receiving departments. Those are the buckets, if you will, on the right-hand side. But in an indirect cost allocation plan where the methodology is designed by the government, or the federal government, they say, we want a number that reflects work, effort, and energy. So we might use a number like financial transactions to take the cost of finance and allocate those costs up to all of these various receiving departments. And something, an example like that, it could be that planning and community development might get the lion's share of that cost because they generate the lion's share of financial transactions. And so what we're doing is just looking for a methodology. We're looking for a number that says this number represents the work, effort, and energy, in this example of the finance department, to the other receiving departments. So any question about that? Everybody's good to go? All right, thank you. All right, moving along then to the user fee study. I'm going to be going over the methodology, the approach, and the results. And again, we're using, next slide, please. We're using a methodology that really comes out of the idea of activity-based costing, where we are looking at the activities that are involved in processing any given application, and then we're assigning cost by position, by activity. So on the right-hand side, the fee could be a site plan review. And in that middle column, there's process steps, application intake, initial application review, review application for conditions of approval, prepare report for planning commission. And these activities are generic. They are not necessarily the ones that we used here in for the town of Atherton, although they're probably really close. And then we're looking at how various positions contribute their time to those steps, which then feeds into what's the total cost for a site plan review. Next slide, please. So the way this actually works out in terms of numbers, and again, this graph is totally hypothetical. That has nothing to do with the town of Atherton. But you can see there on the left-hand side, this would be for a conditional use permit. Coming down that column, there are several activities that are involved with processing a conditional use permit. And then we've assigned time to each of those activities based on the person or position that's contributing their time. So that first line, the application submittal, you see that the assistant planner would contribute an hour and a half to that activity, and the senior planner a half hour, for a total of 2 hours. We add all those things up down towards the bottom. We multiply that total time by the hourly cost per position. That would be the direct hourly cost. And we come up, for example, that the total cost, direct cost to provide a conditional use permit is $11,744. And then we layer on top of that the cost that's incoming from the citywide or townwide cost allocation plan. We also layer on any department administration. In this case, there might be a community development department that would be contributing management and leadership. And we would also add to that any customer service. Most towns, as does your own, has a permit center or some kind of a desk where people can come and get their applications processed. They can come get a question answered. They can come and most towns and cities will provide, say, for example, a planner or engineer or a building official just to ask general questions that may or may not ever turn into an application. I call that customer service, for lack of a better term. So we're layering all of those other costs on top of the direct cost, which in this case, in total is $20,261. Now, that is a bit of a mouthful. Any questions about that before I, yes, ma'am.
So, planning manager, assistant planner, planning tech, senior planner. Do we have that many hands that go, positions in our town that a conditional use permit would go through? Is that, do we have that many staff? We do?
We don't have a planner tech, which is called up on there, but we do have other planning positions. We have assistant planners, associate planners, senior planners, and then my position, which is town planner.
Uh-huh. Gosh.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be streamlined a little bit more.
And
somehow.
again, just to point out, this is just a hypothetical. This isn't
I
specific.
I know, but it would be nice to have it actually reflect what we have.
We've got some numbers.
So, well, they're gonna get to that
Okay,
in the detail.
okay. Is it in our summary results?
I actually picked these numbers because they actually reflect the current project.
You're
And,
doing?
this particular community is, trying to figure out why their expenses for planning applications
Are
are
so
4 or 5
high.
times
Yeah.
higher than all of their benchmark.
It would seem that some of, this is.
Well, we could tell you, but we,
Uh,
you know, we could give you some input, but
Okay,
that would have to cost you because we, you know, have to charge out a ton.
okay, all right. I'm sorry to have interrupted. We're doing.
Yeah, so there, if I understand this, there are 3 really important variables in this. One is the hours of each position that you're allocating to the task, in this case, a conditional use permit. And I'm assuming when we get into the detail that that's accurate, because that's a big piece of the work you've done in trying to figure out what the number of hours are. That's one variable. The second variable is the hourly cost per position, which I think is in the attachment to the
It's in the staff.
It's in the
report.
staff
to the
report.
staff report. And I have a question about that,
Mm.
which is in in that attachment, which is on page 24, staff productive hourly rates. I looked at it and it adds up the salary, services and supplies, or it's salary plus benefits, then services and supplies, which is some allocation that I'm not exactly sure what it is, but
Moment.
I'm sure it involves that
Oh.
each individual. And citywide cost allocation, which again, I'm not sure what that is, but maybe that's the,
And for the
in,
buildings.
I'm not sure what that is,
Right.
but it's some number.
You know.
And it comes up with a total. And then you divide into that total 1,650. Why do you choose 1,650?
We actually, you got about 2 questions in there, if I may.
Okay,
First of all, I'm not using those numbers to calculate the hourly cost for planning building staff,
oh,
because some of those costs are contracted staff.
right,
And the objective of those numbers is really more on the occasion where Robert's time might have to be charged out, so it's not an everyday kind of a thing. And then the right-hand column, we noticed the city overhead or town overhead. That's
Right.
coming in from the cost allocation plan that we just reviewed.
okay,
But you're absolutely right. You've got some variables in here.
Right.
The time that's been assigned. And that process is, I'm a big believer that the process is as important as the outcome. And so we spent considerable time working with staff to review those. It was not a once and done kind of a thing. We did it and then we reviewed it again and we reviewed it again. And the next slide will actually show you some of the quality checks that we have in the process to make sure that we got good data.
Okay, but so I get it. And that's the hourly allocation and I'm confident that you focused really seriously on that and I accept that. You've got an hourly cost per position. I understand it's different with planners because they're hired at a per hour rate. That's fine. Where I looked at it was on our different staff. I mean, I understand that it's not full-time that they're there. You're not going to assign them full-time hours,
Right.
but your dollars per hour
yes,
is based on
Yeah.
dividing 1,650 into the sum.
Right.
And is that
How do I-
because you're assuming 1,650 is a year's worth of work?
Yes, so in some cases with police, there's actually a number that Robert provided me. So I used that number. Otherwise, sometimes I will actually calculate those productive hours. Sometimes it just makes more sense to use a number that will be used across the board.
But that's the productive hours. I understand you got to calculate that and that's going to
Wait,
vary based on the task, but
Well,
you're coming out with $1 per person.
For an hour.
It's-
Well, I mean,
Well, you could have
you're
divided two-
referencing, you're referencing page
Yeah,
24,
it's just trying to understand.
but Rick, there's no planners on this.
Yeah, because they're contracted.
Yeah,
There's a
There's-
set hourly rate for that.
Yeah.
These are just. for the
He's just
interim
trying to
staff.
understand how the table was built
No,
and how it
I
applies.
Right.
I think that 1,650 is chosen because that's an assumed number of hours worked. a
Yeah,
year.
George reported that to us and I talked to him about that in other places I've worked, we've had 1,750 and things like that,
Yeah,
but he said, well, that's
2,000.
what it is. This is the city and they get more time off, et cetera, et cetera. So it's reasonable that was a reasonable number.
In terms of reasonableness, and I think your point is spot on. For planning, engineering, building staff, anything from a low of 1,550 to a high of 17 is pretty typical. If I go through the calculations and say how much vacation time, how much sick leave, how much this, how much training time, et cetera, it usually comes in, if I go through the calculations, right around in the mid 1,600 hours.
Well, that's where you are.
So that's where I'm at, yeah. And if I was doing this exact same project for the state, I'd use 1,776 because that's what their state budget people tell me to use, which I think is too high, but that's my opinion.
You had a question?
no,
Had a question? Yeah, the 1,750 is what we used in the Defense Department, but we calculated it, but that's what we used. So it's reasonable.
Well, and what I want to include in that, besides, vacation, sick leave, holiday leave, all that, we also want to include something for training. Because professional staff especially have to have training hours every year to maintain their professional certifications. So there's a little bit more to it than just vacation and sick leave.
Yeah, I agree. Numbers were good.
Okay, should I go on?
Yeah,
Okay.
unless somebody has another question. Diana, do you have any questions on this?
No, she's shaking her head no.
Okay, we can move on.
Okay, thank you. So I always get the question of, well, how do you know that if your data is good? And ultimately, in the end of the day, I can't tell you if a lot line adjustment should take 10 hours or 20 hours. But I do have a number of quality checks to make sure that in total, the data is solid and defensible. The first one of those is, I'm just going to go down through the list. Budget expenses entering the cost models must equal total expenses accounted for in the model. So in each organization, engineering, building, and planning, I develop an individual model. And if I have $1 million of cost, the model says I have to have $1 million accounted for. However, it takes place, if I start out with $1 million, I have to end up with $1 million. And if I'm like a penny too little or a penny too over, I actually get a little flashing red sign in my cell that says numbers don't add up. Secondly, projected revenue from fees must closely match actual revenues from fees. So in my models, I actually project forward an amount of revenue based on current fee levels, as well as on the full cost. So when I make a projection of actual revenues based on current fees, and let's just say that's $750,000 for conversation, I need to be able to look at the actual revenues from, let's say, the planning department, and it needs to be pretty close to $750,000. My plus or minus is 5 to 10%. Sometimes it goes a little bit higher than that. If it's a good day, I'm a little bit lower than that. But somehow, somewhere, I need to have some reasonable comfort that my projection of current revenue is pretty close to actual revenue. And if it's radically different, then I need to know why. Because probably there's an issue with some of the data, and I need to go back and figure out why the discrepancy.
So did you ascertain the amount of time each staff takes to do a task on average by talking to Robert and the contract staff? Or did we get that through, let's say, like I'm used to, time cards, where they have a specific allocation when they're doing a specific type of task?
Yeah. In this case, it's an interview process. So we gathered in a conference room, not quite this big, but around a table, and we walked through each activity, each fee, each activity, and each staff person. And but then again, I've got to make sure that if I have 10,000 hours of time to deal with, I can't over allocate staff time. It's got to be 10,000 hours,
Okay.
which is the third point. I also, that's your question about staff cards is a good one and a common one and an appropriate one. I have worked with any number of towns, cities, counties, state, California, and I think twice I've seen time cards actually work. Most of the time, they don't get filled out correctly, so I don't use them unless they can convince me that they're actually accurate.
Okay, well, that may be in the town, but it's not in the defense business.
So
You know, it's a little tighter because everything's audited and they're auditors, people are filling it out.
Right, right.
And in other parts of the industry, it's also audited,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I can see in the town, everybody's busy doing other things.
Right, right. So the last point there is maybe the third one, available staff time must be fully accounted for in the costing model. So again, if I've got 10,000 hours of staff time to deal with, I need to account for 10,000 hours of time. The last one is really similar to the first one, total revenues from fees and contributions from the general fund or other sources must match total revenues. This is a bit of a broader look where I'm just saying, okay, I've got revenues, I've got multiple sources of revenue that might be determined as revenue, and does it all match? So any questions about that? And I'll start getting into the results.
I have a question.
Yes.
Which of the quality checks does a quality check on indirect and support costs, which is a pretty big allocation for tasks?
Yeah, so what we're doing typically is I'm looking at the total cost, the total direct cost of a service. Let's just say a conditional use permit. And then the model compares the total direct cost for that.
Wait, the total direct cost being the
Staff
number of
time.
allocated hours multiplied by the hourly rate
Right.
for each of those people.
Right,
Okay.
right. And then the model takes the total indirect or support cost and allocates that out to the actual cost of a service on a simple prorated basis.
But how do you know that what the number you're using as the indirect and support cost is accurate?
Well, assuming Excel knows how to do math, that's kind of how it works.
Because you're divided, how do you come up with that number?
Well, again, it's the same process. So for planning, for example, we, in our process, we're saying how much time is spent doing basic department administrative work. Same thing, we've got incoming, townwide overhead costs.
So
That's a given.
so that is basically also people's time multiplied by their rate,
Right,
but it's not the
Yes.
direct
exactly.
time on the item. It's Robert reviewing or George reviewing.
Yes.
Is that right?
Right, right.
Okay.
But
What
it's,
about
but it's
the-
also, could be finance department's time to process, permit fee that's being collected from the applicant. How much does that occur? Is that correct?
Mhm.
Dan?
Or it could be Brittany's time.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm thinking.
Good job.
okay, that's right.
I
Could
have
be
no name
Brittany's
tag
time.
to-
Probably is some of Brittany's time because she's not typically working on actual projects. Maybe some, but a lot of her time is spent overseeing the staff who are doing the projects.
Right.
Same thing with Robert's time. He's not actually, reviewing engineering applications so much, but he's certainly providing administrative as well as technical expertise.
Would it also include the time we spend reviewing minutes from contractors that do that for the planning commission meeting and then preparing those and clerking the planning commission as well?
So, so you've got the direct time estimated, you've got the overhead time, which would be, staff time. What about the overhead cost of the facility and the maintenance of the facility? So
that's
what
all-
numbers did you have and, what depreciation or amortization schedules did you have and things like that?
That's all in the indirect cost allocation plan. So we've taken, so in this case, we've taken the cost of the building we've taken the square footage of the building and the square footage that's consumed by planning function, the engineering function, et cetera, and the maintenance of that. And then we're applying those costs on that simple basis. When it comes to depreciation, the federal government actually designs the method for doing that. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I think they allow, is it 2% a year?
Maybe 2 or 3.
It's just like they allow 2% a year for amortization.
Okay,
Might be 3, but it's a formula that they say this is how you do it.
okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Diana?
Shaking head.
Taking her in, no. Okay. So next slide, please. Sources of revenues for services. So I've taken these 3, building, planning, and engineering. I'm calling them development services, not because you have a Department of Development Services, but simply because these 3 work units reflect development services. Again, there's no Department of Development Services, just that the work of these 3 organizations represent development services. So you see going from left to right. Building fee revenue is a net loss of $785,000. In other words, if you were to bring building fees all up to full cost, you would collect an additional $785,000. And I'll get into more detail on that in a moment. Planning fee revenue is suggesting a net loss of $927,000. And in a moment, I'll get into why that number is so high. And then on the engineering side, it's a $114,756 for a total net loss, if you will, of $1.8 million from these 3 services. And I will be getting into why that number is so high in just a moment. But before I do that, any particular question about this particular slide?
Staggering. It's staggering. Is the shortfall of the planning of a reflection of changing planning consultants? recently?
Yeah, but I've got some specific comments on that.
Okay.
I move on? Okay, let's look at building then. So you see on the bars left to right, cost from Interwest, $1.6 million. That's not as high as it is currently. As we got into the project, we realized that the contract for Interwest has not been changed in 10 years. And so didn't really see a lot of value in using the cost structure of that contract to calculate the new fees. So Robert, if you want to step in with exactly what we did with Interwest to come up with that $1.6 million.
Yeah, what we did is because we had the old costs of what their fees were to have a plan check or a building inspector, building official from the original contract in 2011, we updated the cost, hourly cost of what it costs today for a building official, a building plan check, a building inspector, in Interwest's costs. So we use those to update the models. Because previously, those have been the same cost from 2011. So we updated based on the current costs that it would cost to house a building department today.
Okay.
I'm just a little confused about that because that cost sharing model, or revenue sharing model, I don't know, I seem to remember when we put it in place and so remember, Mayor Widmer was also on board at that time, that would be something that as the revenue went up, you know, the cost sharing would go up at the same time. And so it kind of was a check and balance so that we wouldn't get into this situation. So how did we get into this situation?
We got into this situation because when we did increase our fees,
Yeah.
the request was for Interwest to hold their contract constant. So Interwest then capped their fee table at the old fee schedule as our fees went up. And it prevented exactly what you're talking about.
But where
So
did
they-
those fees go? I
It
mean,
went to the town. Not to Interwest directly, because as you're pointing out, their contract is percentage based.
right,
55% or 58% on the
58%
first
the
million, 55% after that.
right.
When our fee schedule went up, or we added new fees or
Uh,
appreciation or valuation went up, their calculations were based on the prior fee table, not the new fee table, as we did that. So because these are a little bit out of whack.
Yeah.
What Robert's saying we did is we went back and said, okay, let's look at the hourly rate because we can't really look at the contract. So the contract negotiation is separate and apart from our fee table.
Okay,
And we looked at what the hourly cost would be to provide building services as we provide them
uh-huh.
and use that in the calculation for the cost.
So
accounting
that's
model.
what we're seeing
Yes.
here, not, but so have we actually lost the $700,000 or $1,785,000? Have we?
Well, that 785 is based on the new fee recommendation at
new fee.
100% cost recovery.
Okay,
So that's
So that's just.
that's future, not past.
Yeah.
but that wasn't what we
What we've
left
lost.
on the table.
No,
No, But our,
Okay,
the new calculation, maybe a get well plan, but again, it's a revenue share. So if we're raising all of our fees, then the revenues are going to go up with the larger fees. So, you know, it just can't be, you know, some massive number. It's got to be
Exactly.
be in line with that we're raising the fees, so they're getting a higher percentage of that. And I thought originally that their contract and the fee sharing that was going to escalate with cost of living, which has gone up, but regardless whether it has or whether it hasn't, we have to take in mind when we're renegotiating this thing that the new fee structure is going to provide them more money because they're going to be more fees. And if they want a bigger share of that, that's, you know, that's for us to discuss, but
but I guess we haven't raised our fees adequately.
yeah, I know we have.
So that's what our
That's part of the
losses are
challenge.
showing.
Yeah, correct.
Correct. And
No wonder everybody wants to build an after.
And the other thing is that, you know, of course, at the same time, if we raise our fees, and even though with the fees that we have, you know, we're budgeting full employment to everybody here. And so,
Well,
you
I
know, I
understand
asked
what you're
George this, well, where's this money going?
Right.
You know, and where's it gonna go if we raise our fees? Because, you know, should we, if we raise our fees to this number, should we then say, okay, the planning department, well, this is where it'd be if we did it all, but it's being contracted out, we have higher fees, so we're only gonna fund 25% of it or something like that. And I didn't get a great answer. It's not time to talk about budget now, but it will be in March.
But what I want to get my head around is if we're having to pay our staff, which is Interwest, higher, you know, that their costs are higher. Somebody's losing $785,000 here,
Nobody's lost anything yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this is future,
Okay,
future.
that
fee
was one of my
adjustment.
questions, is
future fee
projected or
adjustments.
last year's?
Yeah, unless we adjust our fees, we're gonna continue to not collect as much as the cost for services.
Right.
But the cost for services model with
Right.
Interwest is percentage based, so it's not gonna, it doesn't correlate. to
So
what you're
who's
seeing.
losing? Interwest is losing.
Correct.
Interwest.
Correct.
Yeah. And they're,
Right.
right, and so but that's, like we said, a conversation for a different day. We're not negotiating their contract
Okay,
in public.
so if their contract goes up, we definitely have to raise our fee.
And no,
If our fees go up, then we have to see what their compensation will be.
yes,
This slide assumes 75% goes to Interwest.
basically. Yes.
And that's just a number you're pulling.
Based on the hourly rates to provide application processing.
Right.
But that's not their contract.
Correct.
Two
Okay.
separate things.
Yes.
So
hypothetical.
this slide doesn't match the slide that's in the chart that's in the packet on page 9. It's actually 17 of 56 of the summary That page 9 in the packet. Development services,
So the,
which is like building cost structure.
yeah, the Interwest component of that is the 1.6 million.
Yeah.
The town component of that is 533. That's part of the overhead and all that.
Not
sort of
on
stuff.
my chart.
Um,
It says 2,133,000 is the
Yeah.
The-
cost services and projection of revenues at
Yeah.
current fees is.
Yeah, that slide is the same as the previous
trying to
slide we
match it.
just looked at.
Which was this one.
2113. Right.
Right, so why is this different?
Yeah.
I'm confused.
So
That's a good question.
All right.
I
You
don't
asked me about,
understand. I'm not smart enough right now.
talking about this red bar.
Yeah, I'm just wondering,
Oh,
you know, about
well,
this.
this red bar here, here,
Yeah.
that's 533,000.
Oh, here, yeah,
That's the city cost or the town cost of the town for, you've got for a town overhead cost allocation plan, as well as any town staff that are supporting the building function. That's the 533, and the total between the two is $2.1 million.
No,
And
but
so-
that
Oh,
assumes.
I see, we're
1.6
adding
million.
that and.
We're in-
Yeah, they're
interest.
added together.
Right.
Right.
But where's
It
that number
gets you-
come from?
It actually comes from Interwest.
That,
hourly rates.
that's the hourly rate.
The 16?
Yeah.
Correct.
A
So that we
building
updated.
inspector, a building official.
But what we've, the revenue we received was 1,347,000.
Correct.
So that, which shows that there's a deficit based on the actual cost structure, the 785,000. And this 1.6 million, you said the Interwest contract is that they get 58% of the first million and then
They get
55%?
Correct. So, but that does not
That's-
relate to this 1.6.
No, so you're just pulling this 1.6 out of the air?
No,
Oh,
no,
they
so
said they
pulling the
calculated-
1.6, we're looking at their actual hourly rates of a building official, a building inspector, and the time it takes to process plan check and applications, and using that as the fundamental bit of the cost accounting model.
Based
Because
on,
we can't use their 55%, 58% as what it costs for building services, because that's a contractual negotiated price.
so that's,
Doesn't reflect true cost.
it's Interwest's
It's
actual
our true
cost.
cost.
It's our cost, but not the cost of processing an application.
Yeah, they have a guesstimate on Interwest
Yeah.
based on their current.
Basically,
So,
fees.
so currently they're getting far less than our estimate on what their actual cost of service is.
Currently, they're getting a
Because
negotiated price,
you're
which is
doing
what-
some kind of an analysis and coming up that their cost of service is $1.6 million, even if they're contractually only getting, even if we've contracted, we'll pay you 1.357 million for your services. You're saying, in fact, their cost of service is greater than that. It's really not. It's just, that's based on some analysis of time value. That's what their value is.
Yeah, this is a projection.
Well, they haven't raised their rates
Right.
in quite a while.
Say it
They
again.
have not raised their.
No, I
rates in
understand
quite a
that.
while.
I
So-
understand.
but I thought, oh, you're right.
And we haven't raised our building revenue.
If we
at
had
all.
raised our rates, that would have raised their rates, obviously.
Correct.
Yes.
Right,
that's
and we
correct.
stopped.
That's what Bill's saying. This is gonna obviously raise their rates.
Maybe.
Well, even if they stay at
Oh,
the
it
same
depends on the
percentage they're at.
contract.
Well,
No,
yeah,
it depends on negotiated contract.
I
I
know,
don't
but
wanna get into the
if
negotiation
in the
topic.
past, George.
No,
Pardon?
If in the past, we raised our rates
Then they would have got.
during
It's been passed through them.
contract without changing the contract,
It-
they would
they
have been
would've-
getting more
Yes.
money.
Yeah,
too, Right? That's what
absolutely.
Rick is saying.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, but that's not what happened. We
Yeah,
did
because
increase
we
our
didn't
rates.
raise our rates.
We increased some of our rates and they held them constant.
I see. But the rates we increased were not ones that they got, that the percentage applied to.
There were
Those-
some flat fee ones that were adjusted, but we didn't increase the valuation-based fees, which is the bulk of the revenue.
All right.
and by us not raising our rates, the
They still
cost,
provided service.
they provided a service, but all of our other costs have increased. And so we're actually at a deficit
Yes.
for this whole thing because we haven't kept up with
Yeah, that's why we're
the-
doing this.
yeah, we can't make a profit on our fees, just bottom line.
Correct.
But we don't want to lose, we don't want to subsidize fees to the detriment of the health and well-being of the town.
Well, we can make
True, but you can make
projections on
policy
what it's been
decisions.
in the past as far as fees.
Yeah.
And they have to bid on that. That's, just like Mademoiselle Colette did and just as, Interwest had, or not Interwest, but other contractors like,
MC.
yeah. So anyway, when you're projecting the future, you're taking a little bit of a risk.
Right.
Unless you're doing time and material.
Oh, and that's,
Okay, so to summarize, both Interwest and the town are losing money based on our current fee structure and that we're not recouping our costs.
Yes.
Great.
We're not
But the
losing, we're making
beneficiary
money, okay?
is
We're
our-
not
our
losing money,
residents.
we're not operating in a deficit.
It's money that could be spent not subsidizing other people's buildings that could be spent on
Yes.
Yes, oh,
townwide
that's a good
initiatives.
point.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Change
I-
the chart. 'cause
Well,
now we got
and I just
15
want to
minutes.
say that back, 10 years ago when this was, I think there was a conscious decision to
Yeah.
not have rate fees that were fully recovered.
Right,
There was a percentage that I think council felt was
yeah, we went through every rate individually
Yeah.
and it said adjust up, adjust down. Yeah,
Right,
yeah, we
yes.
did that, just same as maybe.
or I don't know that we're
get to
doing that
today,
yet.
but-
I don't think that's what,
We'll get to some of that in that big table at the end,
okay.
but those are the policy choices
There
you can make.
today.
And they were deliberate in terms of the goal of the council to make sure that we're still providing that free customer service at the counter for those questions that come up.
Right,
part
questions
of the
that come up,
process.
yeah.
Right,
I don't think that we anticipated it would be 10 years between adjustments. And I can understand 2018 being, kind of we kind of got busy doing other things.
okay.
I'm
let's
moving
move
right
on.
along. Okay, next slide, titled Building Sources of Revenue. Cost, by revenue by fee type. So I'm gonna start off with the green bar and then go to the left. The green bar represents what we sometimes call flat fees. We might call these the trades. This would be someone walks in the door and want to buy an individual electrical permit. they want to buy an individual plumbing permit or a, you know, some kind of a
Water heater.
water, exactly, thank you. Perfect
welcome.
example.
Mechanical plumbing,
Mechanical
electrical.
plumbing, electrical. That's actually my standard example. And I'll just use myself. Dan walks to the door, he needs an inspection on the new water heater that I just installed myself. And I find out that the cost of the inspection is actually more than the water heater.
Exactly.
And so I turn around, and walk out the door and say, I don't want to let the town know that I just bought a new water heater. But that's the example.
Is that what you do?
No,
A lot of people do that.
Just wanted to know.
might be tempted. Thank you. And then the red bar actually represents plan check revenue. So Dan walks in the door, he's putting up adding a new kitchen to his house. He needs a plan review of his plans. And the town is going to charge me some magic number for the plan review. And then the blue bar actually represents the permit or essentially the cost of doing the inspection work. And so in this particular project, we started out with those trades fees, and then we backed into what we needed from new construction, inspection, permitting, plan check to bring the town up to full cost, again, which is the $2.1 million. Moving on to the next one. Next slide. And this is where this conversation can get complicated.
He looks at me.
I gave you a good summary in my pre-agenda email.
So the main source of revenue
Did
is,
you ask a lot of questions?
the main source of revenue are the valuation-based fees. And those are the fees where someone walks in the door, say, I want to buy a permit for my brand new home or my remodel or the add-on to my home. And the town is going to charge that fee first for the building permit and then a percentage of the building permit for the plan check fee. And so the question becomes, how do you calculate the cost of the permit and plan check? The town uses a model called valuation. So there's an estimate made of valuation. And then that you see on the screen or on this form here, you see the model that's used. So if the valuation of the project is $1 million, the permit fee is going to be $6,193 for the first $1 million. So the question becomes, well, how do you determine valuation? Okay, and that really is that's the complicated part. But before I get into that, any questions so far?
So that's the building permit fee is $6,193. What's the plan review fee?
The plan review fee would be 65% of that.
No, it's 65%
Excuse me,
of the first
Separate
500.
fees.
right. I mean, yeah, right. 45%.
So what's, you don't know what that is?
I didn't calculate it out.
George, it's
George,
something
there
in
was
his Friday
provided-
letter.
yeah. A sample of what that would be.
George wrote something up in the Friday, in
Correct.
the
Pre-agenda.
pre-meeting, yeah.
But that's how you, just on how you use
Yeah.
the table. I think Dan's next slide talks about the options that that has.
Okay. Next slide, please. So the question becomes, how do you determine valuation? And there is no magic to this. There's really three ways to calculate or to determine the valuation of the construction project. One way, and the most logical, is given construction value. So the applicant walks in the door, they bring the contract with them from their contract, and the contractor says, this building is going to cost you $1 million. That becomes the valuation. There's only a couple of problems with it. Number one, is really easy to manipulate. I tell this story because even I was a bit surprised by it. I was actually probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was sitting in a conference room with chief building officer from one of your neighbors. And we actually were going through a year's worth of new construction building data. And then through the magic of Google Maps, we could actually look at those specific addresses to see what was actually built versus what the description and the permit system actually said was going to be built, of which generated the fee. And he was not quite sure what word to use, but he was highly concerned. The number of building projects, once they were built, didn't exactly match up to what was in the permitting system, which generated the fee. Bottom line, he could tell that they were actually manipulating the system of using given construction value. The other problem with it is you could have two identical homes. And my standard example is two homes, exact same floor plan, exact same everything, except for one home buys their marble countertops from the finest quarry in Italy, and the other gets them from the finest Home Depot store. And all of that will create a vastly different value of that project, but it's not going to cost the city any more if the marble comes from Italy or the marble comes from Home Depot. It's the same inspection, it's the same plan check. And so exact same floor plan, exact same everything. One applicant is going to be charged one fee, another applicant is going to be charged another fee, but there's no difference to the work effort and energy by town staff. Second option is to use what's called the International Code Council, or the ICC table, which is a table that's put out by the International Code Council, where they actually calculate average construction value across the country. There are some regional adjustments for that. It's looking at broad averages. I actually recommend most of my clients to use this because it's a objective standard. It works most of the time, but it doesn't necessarily work well when communities don't represent the average. And the town of Atherton would be one of those. You don't build average homes. You don't build 2,500 square foot cookie cutter tract homes. Everything is custom. And as one of your inspectors told me, was that the homes that are built in Atherton, in terms of the construction, what goes into the construction actually looks a lot more like commercial construction than residential construction. So in this case, the ICC table probably wouldn't be a good option to use to calculating construction value. The third one is an estimate of cost per square foot, which may or may not have any relevance to the actual cost. It's essentially a number. It's a nice big fat round number that probably comes close, but is not really designed to actually reflect actual construction cost per square foot. But it's the number that we can use to calculate and then use the this table here to arrive at the fee that's going to be charged. And we can structure that so in total, the town doesn't over collect or under collect. Now, I've probably confused everybody. If I have, I apologize. But any questions about that at all? And what we're suggesting is that valuation cost per square foot goes from 305 to 509. Yes, ma'am.
And what do we do now? We do the square footage.
You do square footage right now, yes.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So what will the increase, the 45.6 increase in valuation due to property tax assessments?
Property taxes, I have no
The
idea.
assessed
They're
values.
calculated by the assessors.
Yeah, the assessors.
Assessor goes
Yeah.
through.
Not us.
Okay, they're not assessed by the cost of the improvements.
Not the cost that they paid the town for the permit now. They're calculated by the assessor based on footage and
Yeah,
construction value.
I'll give a little information. So every building permit that we finalize,
Has a
the
valuation.
plans go to the assessor's office.
Right.
So they make their independent assessment of what that valuation is.
Yeah, okay.
And to answer Rick's earlier question on the valuation of $1 million project, that is about 1,964 square feet would be a $1 million project at $509 per square foot. So that is the $8,984 permit, plan check and permit combined.
The point of all of this is that we want to make sure that the town
Did you get?
is calculations covers the full cost of the town, but not anything more than that. So the state actually says that you can charge a reasonable estimate of cost. The state doesn't say how to calculate that cost. The state doesn't say what to include or exclude in that cost. The state just says it has to be a reasonable estimate of cost. Should I move on?
Yep.
Okay. So, next slide is, I did a comparison of a 10,000 square foot custom built home. Compared the total fee, for both plan check and inspection based on your current fee model and based on the proposed valuation model of $509 per square foot. And you can see the total, those are the two green bars. Currently, that would be $23,590. You change the model up to full cost, it would be $32,881. So not a massive increase, but certainly substantial. But on the other hand, you haven't raised your fees in 10 years.
But isn't it about a 45% increase? And it's 46%.
36 and 45.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Material.
Yeah, especially on the prices that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's based on the prices that it's gonna sell at. That's not exactly a big jump, however, we can always ratchet
But
them
wait,
up over time.
you say here the plan check fee is 45% of the permit. But the previous slide said it's 65%.
For the other tiers, for the higher tiers, when you get
No,
down to
but
the
for the
last
first,
two.
even for every tier, for the first 500,000, it's 65% of the permit, not 45%.
That is a terrific observation.
What was the question?
The observation.
Plan
if
review.
I think you made the same mistake in your,
So if it's
no.
if it's $1 million project, you only read across one line.
Yeah.
That line there.
wait, if it's $1 million project, you don't build it up?
You don't build it up.
No.
You only read across where the $1 million is.
I see.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. That's great. That clarifies it.
Any other questions before we move on? Yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
How did you get the 509 number? Is that?
It's really backed into, so we started out with the 350 and then we said, how much additional revenue do you need to get to full cost? Do the math, we come up with 509.
Got it.
So it has nothing to do with going out and interviewing developers and saying, how much does it cost to build a house?
Any other questions?
All right.
Diana, you with us?
Yep. She's in.
Oh, good, good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to planning fees. And planning engineering is a little more straightforward than building. The process for both planning and engineering, as well as building, was identically the same. Spent a lot of time working with Brittany and her staff. Not only did we look at those time estimates that we were reviewing a few moments ago, but we also looked at the fees themselves. We looked at descriptions. Some cases we added some. I think in some cases we deleted a few services because they weren't reflective of reality anymore. So it's not just a changing of the numbers, it's actually bringing the fee schedule up to processing requirements, bringing the descriptions up to date. So it's really updating the entire schedule of planning and engineering fees. And as you can see, there's quite a difference between full cost and revenue for planning, a loss of $927,000. And if you go to the next slide, we'll explain why that number is so high. Thank you. So the first one is that there's only been two adjustments to planning fees since 2011. And those were done by simple CPI numbers. The second one is that planning fees were not adjusted to full cost in 2011. The third one, and I see this a lot, is that the regulatory environment since 2000 has changed dramatically. So a lot line adjustment, and I use a lot line adjustment for all of my examples because I understand a little bit what that is. Brittany can certainly weigh in on this better than I can, but what the processing requirements have changed a lot. The regulatory environment has changed a lot in the last 10, 12 years. Am I pretty close to that?
Yes, and I'm sure that the council can attest to that as well.
All right. The fourth one is that the new contractor is expanding the application processing to reflect the current planning code requirements and the state regulations. So Brittany's actually working with her staff to review those applications. Correct me if I'm wrong, review the process to make sure that all of those applications are approved or not based on current requirements, town, county, state requirements. Okay. And then the hourly costs for the new contractor are higher than the previous contractor because they had not adjusted their fees since 2000.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's kind of a
That's the
perfect
biggest
storm for planning fees,
With
which is not
environmental.
untypical. And again, this is where, and this is me speaking to you as the town council. My bias is to fully recover these costs, but I don't vote here. I don't live here, so I get to give you my opinion and leave. But this is one place where I really advocate that you make a conscious decision of what is our policy? What are we trying to accomplish, especially with planning fees? And make a decision of full cost, not full cost, based on thoughtful deliberation and values of the town.
I just want to make, if I can add another comment here about planning. The scope of planning from 2011 to today has exponentially increased, I think, because of the complexity of the homes that are being built. I mean, in 2011, we didn't have the complexity of the homes that we have.
And the changes in state regulations.
And well, and the environmental and this, yeah, the state regulations, absolutely. But it's like this department has really been hit by, you know, a meteor and exploded. So it's huge.
Right, thank you. Well, let's move on to engineering.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Up there, the second item, planning fees were not adjusted to full cost in 2011.
Right.
So the council in 2011 made a intentional decision not to adjust the fees to the full cost. What percentage of costs were they adjusted to?
I don't think it was a percentage.
No.
Some range from like 53% to like 75% cost recovery in
see.
some of the
Yeah, we looked
fees.
at the numbers and adjusted the numbers
So-
and you know, there wasn't really, and I don't think there was ever a belief that, oh, by the way, we'll look at these for another 10 years.
No. I think what it was for someone coming up to the counter, a homeowner, and say, you know, I kind of think I want to remodel my kitchen, you know, what would I have to do this, you know, kind of more of a casual encounter, if you will, with a planner that we wouldn't charge and, you know, write down an hourly and say,
Right.
you have to pay a fee to get some kind of preliminary general advice. Or could you take a look at my, you know, hand-drawn, you know, what I think I want to do with remodeling a den or adding this, you know, whatever. I think it was much more casual encounters, I think, that we said we wouldn't charge for that.
And I think we still need to leave it that way.
Whoa, but
personally.
the planners do more, I understand that.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that analysis carried over to new construction and to all planning activities.
No, 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 no. Because those initial, those you wouldn't get charged for at all. But then the whole planning, I mean, I think there was a percentage reduction, maybe
it was-
10%, 20%.
It was a recognition of, this is the cost of planning, $350 some odd thousand. But we're only getting this much revenue. And then the council did look at fees, as the mayor's indicated, and said, variances we're not gonna reduce, or, this permit, we're gonna reduce a little bit, but we're still not gonna hit the full cost of planning services.
Well, it sounds like it was 50-some%.
For
About
some,
53
some.
for some of the fees.
No,
I don't remember that.
yeah, I don't remember that exact
Being
number. No,
50%.
doesn't sound right. But I have a secondary question if you're done.
I am.
If in fact we choose to give the casual request without a fee, can we take that cost and allocate it across the things that actually matriculate into it?
Already
Is
been
that-
done,
Yeah, that's already done.
already been done.
Yeah, okay, all right, because that's normally what one would do, but I didn't know if we were being,
No, in
So-
fact, I would, well, yeah, it has already been done. That's actually how I do it.
okay.
Is I calculate that cost for that customer service, the casual person walks in the door. What do I want to do? Remodel my kitchen. I want to add a new bedroom, whatever. What do I need to do? They get their answer, they walk out the door, you never see them again.
Mhm.
Basic customer service, every organization has to provide it, so that cost is already built in. Now, if you as the town council would say, and I've had a handful of clients who will do this, they say, no, that permit is a general public service. We don't want to charge anything for that.
Mhm.
I can easily go in and pull that cost right out of the model, and then you get a whole new set of fees.
So we pull that cost out
The
Nobody's
planning
asking.
and it
cost,
goes somewhere else.
And yeah, it goes, it stays.
We
in
have
your
to
pocket.
then calculate it somewhere else.
No, it
just
no.
goes into general overhead.
Okay.
No, but that's what Bill's saying, is he wants to recover it by spreading it across other.
Yeah, it's already recovered by spreading across
Well, I
all
think,
of the
I think
fees.
you're talking two different things. I think the mayor's talking about the customer service component,
Mhm.
and you may be talking about, an ADU permit. If you set that
No,
up
I'm
to
talking
zero.
about-
No, I'm talking
That's
about
a different
anything we
issue.
waive the fee on.
Ah,
Can we take that fee, that cost of that fee, and put it into the general planning overhead? Because it is a cost that they're going through, but it's not being charged directly to that minuscule project.
Sure, and that's actually the way the model is built.
uh, i-
But
Is it?
yeah, so I've taken the cost of customer service and I've spread it across everything. I affectionately call it the sprinkling effect.
Right, so, but I think if the council goes through, for example, and waives
Yeah, but
ADU permits, JADU permits, fence permits, variance permits, whatever they are those internal costs gonna increase in every other permit?
Depends on how you want to handle it. It certainly can. I doubt that it would be legal.
Exactly. So I don't think we
Oh,
can.
So
do
you
that.
can't do what I'm saying.
yeah, correct.
Okay.
Can do
all
it for
right.
customer service, but we cannot if we're waiving fees for specific items.
No, you
Is
can
what,
waive-
there's a
you can-
difference.
You can waive the fee, but you can't blend it
Right.
into the cost. of
That's it,
another
but there's a
permit.
difference that
you could waive it,
customer
you can't
service
recover
can
it.
be,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
But to me, it makes sense that if somebody comes in and asks a question, I'd like to build this, blah, 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 give me what I need to do, that they're gonna come back. And that direction on what they needed to do went into the efficiency of doing the plan review.
Yes,
That's in
so-
the model.
that is in. the model.
That part's
That's in the model. What's not in the model is if we decide to waive the fees for solar
Yeah.
panel permits or for
That's now state.
ADU permits, then that doesn't
What?
spread across.
It's now a state requirement. Everybody has to do it. So
Well,
that-
and
I
that
was
would
gonna
be
say,
legal. I
we've
get
already
that.
done that.
Right.
I mean, we did that years ago.
but we can undo it now. There's a requirement.
The
Well-
bottom line, if I may.
Well, I
is
give
that
the
you
money
can't-
away.
You can't you can lower a fee below cost, but you
Mhm.
can't raise the fee to compensate.
Okay,
Got
got
it.
it.
Now
I got
you're
it.
That's simple.
More than cost.
Yeah, okay,
Got it.
yeah. But all these other waiving of fees to incentivize and to make HCD happy. Or hopefully.
Well, they'll result in a subsidy.
Yeah, that's a subsidy that.
Yeah,
And you
we have to
can,
make those decisions.
we just see what the cost is for that process, you know, for that permit. We know what the cost is. Okay, we waive it. This is what we're waiving. We're waiving this cost, this permit.
And you're not technically wavering.
I mean,
You're setting it to zero.
Yes, correct. You set it to zero, just like we did the solar permit fees.
Yes.
Zero,
Uh-huh.
but you still have
I'm
to
in
do
favor of
permit.
bringing those back.
Correct.
Okay.
So are we gonna go through this table of all the fees?
Clearly
I
not
don't-
tonight.
Yeah.
I
so
don't think
we're
we
running
don't
out
have
of-
time tonight.
Yeah,
Because we got Park and
Okay,
Rec comes
are
in
we
here
still
at
doing-
6, right?
But I would, we
6:30.
can let Dan finish
Mhm.
the presentation, but with respect to the table, I think it would be helpful if you do go through it and give me
Individually.
some policy direction and so that we can have that in January when this comes back.
Mhm.
But if I gave.
Wait, when it comes
Can we
back.
get together as like a 2 or 3 some, you know, and kind of have a little.
Threesome?
Yeah.
can we Brown Act?
This has to-
Let's violate the Brown Act.
This has to come back
Let's
as
do
a
it.
public hearing. fee
No, I
resolution.
understand, but before it comes back as a public hearing, we should identify
Uh-huh.
what
Council.
items we want to put at full cost versus less.
Yeah,
than
if you
full
want to give me
cost.
that direction, we can include that in the
He
agenda.
wants us to
as
do it
discussion.
individually so that he
Uh,
can then correlate them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me some feedback that I can then incorporate into the staff report. Otherwise, we're gonna end up having to put this on our December agenda, which won't be good, or have a special meeting, which also.
I
probably
think
not
special
happen.
meetings
So
are fun.
Yeah.
you're,
Not
And the-
December.
No.
Wait, so then you're saying if I say, I want to eliminate, or let's drop a fee on the new habitable construction, that would go into consent?
No.
We
that-
we
that-
would
that will
later
go-
discuss it.
That goes to
To me.
him.
Right, but then what are you doing next?
I will put it into the staff report with Robert as these are the suggestions
Of the
that I
fees.
heard.
Mhm.
Here's your talking points as a council. What do you want to do? What do you don't want to do?
Okay, and then we only talk about those.
all right, do I
10
need
that
to
we've
tell you
all-
again, or did you take notes?
I have yours and I
There's gonna
have
be more
a
than 10.
Rick's.
Okay.
I have
But
like-
if there's others, feel free to share them with.
I also have a lot of like, what is this?
And George, just as an FYI, we can only do this at a regularly scheduled meeting, and the adoption can only be at a regular meeting.
Oh,
Thank
no special meetings?
Not for the
Huh?
adoption.
Not for adoption.
We can have another one next week if you guys want.
No,
but-
no, no. She says it's gotta be
Because it's a fee thing. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a regular.
a regular meeting.
All right, sorry. To
If we're-
derail-
And it has to happen before end of year?
All right, should I?
We may
move on?
have to.
Yeah,
change
move
the
on,
meeting.
okay?
We may have to move
No,
our
they can
party.
be- They can be done whenever, the fees, yeah.
So moving on to engineering, probably the least controversial here. The biggest change with engineering is that we increased the number of engineering fees. Essentially what we did, and Robert, you're gonna weigh in on this, one of the trends that I've seen over the last 10, 15 years especially, is that planning applications are requiring more and more engineering review. And so we actually looked at all of the planning applications, and then Robert made a determine these are applications that we review in a substantial way on a regular basis. And then we essentially added those fees to the engineering fee schedule. You may not want to keep them in the engineering fee schedule. You may want to keep them in the planning fee schedule, but then this, Robert, is going to take those revenues and split them out in whatever way.
Hmm.
But essentially, we captured the cost of engineering plan review in the planning, from the planning application.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, your key at the bottom of the chart.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the green in it.
So net difference, all that would, bringing all of the engineering fees up to full cost would bring almost another $115,000.
Yeah.
To the city, to the town.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide, which is the comparison study. In your report, we looked at Los Altos Hills, Woodside, Belmont, Hillsborough, Belvedere, Menlo Park. And then George and Robert asked me also to include Menlo Park, Redwood City, Tuberon, and Portola Valley.
Hmm.
These communities were all recommended for comparison and discussion with staff. We are looking for reasonableness for comparison. Would make no sense to me to compare fees in the town of Atherton with the city of
Belmont.
Well, I was
It's
gonna-
on
I was gonna
here.
say- I was gonna say Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because, I mean,
Belmont's not as big, but it's
communities are just
27,000.
radically different. So it would make a bad comparison of fees. So we're looking for communities that had a reasonable basis. Could be size, could be general, socioeconomic status, all that kind of stuff. Again, we're just looking for reasonableness.
So are you saying that Menlo Park, Redwood City, Portola Valley, Tiburon were not good additions?
I'm sorry?
From your perspective, like, you differentiate between the ones added by the town versus ones you think were a good idea? Is,
Well, actually, the Menlo Park, Redwood City,
Those were added after the fact.
right, I know, I asked for a couple of them, so I'm just curious if you are viewing them, are any of these Palo Alto-esque that we should
No.
be putting an asterisk next to? Okay.
Portola Valley doesn't charge anything, or you didn't get data from it?
I think you might be looking at a.
No,
at a-
look at page 20.
Yeah, another slide.
I'm on page
Skipping
21.
ahead.
They
Yeah.
actually charge a lot of fees based on time and materials. So it's really challenging to figure out, well, what is their cost? So, and there are some challenges. If you want to go back a slide, thank you. When I'm speaking with councils, I always feel a certain compulsion to recognize that there are challenges with comparisons. First of all, you're comparing a current cost that we've established here with somebody else's price. And cost and price can be very, very different. Fee requirements don't always match. So again, I use my standard example of a lot line adjustment. A lot line adjustment can have very different processing requirements in a town like Atherton versus a different community. And so even though the fee schedule says lot line adjustments, you may be comparing apples and oranges, and we're happy if we're in the realm of fruit. But they don't necessarily mean the same thing. Many communities do not routinely update fees with a robust cost analysis. As we've talked about, town of Atherton hasn't done it for 10 years. That's actually more the norm from my experience. It's not unusual for me to come into a town or a city or a department within the state government, and they haven't updated their fees in 20 years. Well, you know, when you're doing comparisons, we just have to recognize that's what we're dealing with.
So when we set the fees in a future meeting, we probably won't do this again for a substantial amount of time. So can we just apply a COLA to it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my standard that's my standard recommendation. In fact, my standard recommendation is adjust them every year. So you don't get in the situation where you're at right now, which is having to raise those fees in a dramatic fashion.
So the COLA would be based on the Bay Area or what the federal government says or what?
There's great question, a number of ways to do that, and I would leave that up to these two guys. You know, basically it's some kind of a COLA CPI. I've seen it done through like a regional government CPI, and there's a actual formula for that, which escapes me at the moment. Some cities will say, well, our average labor cost for planning has gone up 3%, and so they do it that way. There's no right or wrong. It just has to be reasonable. And again, I would leave it up to.
And we need to make sure that we include it as part of our adoption.
Yeah.
Finally, service levels and processes can vary dramatically.
Before we leave that, can I just make a comment for the
Yeah.
council? Looking at the comparison studies, it's like there are two things that really jump out at me that are caught where
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at page 20, but it goes through.
But we're not there yet.
Oh,
No, we're not there yet.
I'm sorry.
You're almost there.
We're still on page
I thought that's
19.
what you were, I thought you were past it, actually.
No,
He
not
does
yet.
that all the time.
So let me just give you an example of service levels and processes and how those can vary. If memory serves, your building department operates on a next day program for a building inspection.
Mm.
That's fairly common, it's fairly standard. Sometimes it's like a 4-hour window of time.
Mm.
One of your neighbors operates on a 10-day window.
Which
and,
one is that?
Is that neighbor on this list?
I really should not respond. to
You could just
that.
wink, just like wink.
That is
Yeah.
Portola
Okay,
Valley.
great.
So, you know, again, and they're quite happy with that, actually. When I was talking to their building official, I'm like, how do you do that? And he was like, it's just what we do. And, you know, so there's just all of these variations and looking at comparisons. So consequently, what I advocate is don't look at, you know, our lot line adjustment versus somebody else's lot line adjustment. Look at the trend. Or does the trends suggest that the new fees for the town of Atherton are in a reasonable range? And my simplistic view of the world, I say, if they're reasonable and a reasonable range, that's a good comparison.
It's defensible.
All right, next slide, please.
Okay, all right, now Rick.
That's okay.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, I was ahead.
I do apologize for the small nature of this. I actually included it in the slide, not that you would actually be able to read the numbers, but just more than anything that you could see. And Robert was kind enough to make a bigger sheet. My intention of including it was just so that you could see that we've expanded the number of communities that we're using for the comparison. That's really my whole purpose. You go on to the next slide. Did you have a?
No, it's okay.
question?
Well, I do, but you can do it.
Okay.
I don't think you.
It'd be number 21.
Number 21?
Yeah, there you go. So, results of the comparison study. So I took, for example, a 8,000 square foot home, 2-story, 4,000 square feet with a 4,000 square foot basement, 12,000 square feet total, and just looking at the cost of a permit. In the town of Atherton, that would be $50,000. Southwest Hills, 52,000. Woodside, 18,000. Belmont, 87,000, which also includes the plan check, because they don't split them out. I couldn't tell what's plan check and what's permit, what the permit. You see that the average there is $37,713. So is the town of Atherton higher than the average? Yeah. But you've got you've got a couple of high numbers in there, you've got a couple of low numbers. So I will leave it to you to determine whether or not that's reasonable comparison to the benchmark city.
Okay, why don't I give my comment? Because I had comments on things you don't track on your other.
Then how about if I go through what I do and then you ask the ones that.
Whatever.
Okay. Next slide, 22. Perfect. So here you can see that the line is the average. So you can see that for an 800 square foot detached garage, the fee charged by the town would be right at average. For a pool house, the average would be, the town would charge a fee that's just slightly less than average. And for 1,000 square foot pool, it would be just slightly more than average. Moving on to planning comparisons. Again, the line is the average. You can see for conditional use permit, the town total fee would be a bit higher than average. For a variance, it's a bit higher. For a lot line adjustment, it's right at average. And for a tentative parcel map, it's right at average. And for a plan review for a fence, it's right at average. Going on to engineering fees. Again, the line is the average. For driveway connection to street, you're right at average. For right-of-way landscape fence, you're right at average. Connection to storm drain, you're a bit above average. Utility disconnect and pavement, you're right at average. And grading and drainage with the detention system, you're quite a bit higher than average.
Wow.
So
That's just for the permit? That's not for the construction of the
That
thing?
includes the.
yeah, that's just the permit.
That includes the construction?
Is that because our
No,
lots
it's
are
a
so much
permit.
bigger?
No, he said it includes the,
Not the cost of construction.
The
It
construction.
includes the
The
inspection.
engineering
oh,
and permit
inspection.
fees.
That's what you said.
But our costs probably higher because our lots are bigger or?
Well, there's a number of reasons.
Sure, there's a lot of.
Yeah,
Robert can address it
I
right
can
away.
go into it if you want.
We
I
can
can
get
wait
both
till
a lot
later
more
if
rules.
you
No,
like.
I was gonna comment on two things. I think we're dramatically high on the grading and drainage with detention system.
Obviously,
And the other where I think we're very high, which the numbers are totally skewed by the inclusion of Redwood City, but it is the plan review for a fence. We're definitely,
Yeah, I think that that's a very high number. George mentioned to me that the drainage and the grading was due to the fact that we invoked a lot more rules. We've incorporated a lot more rules than our neighbors have in our.
well, we
in our
don't have a
rules.
storm system going through our town, so everything is all on the property.
Well, Robert's got a lot more information on
Yeah,
that one
go ahead.
than I do, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share a few tidbits. I can do that now or I can do it later. And so the first thing that I'll comment on is I took a look at a couple of the jurisdictions that we're compared to, and there are things that they charge for that we do not, and that would include charges based on cubic yardage of material that is moved or hauled to the site. We don't have hauling permits that a lot of jurisdictions do. And so our overall grading and drainage permit includes those activities. And so one jurisdiction I looked at charges basically $3 a cubic yard for what is removed from the site and another $3 per yard on the grading activity in addition to their base permit. But generally speaking, we have our stormwater detention requirements that we do that review on with the grading and drainage permit. So we're reviewing their stormwater detention calculations. With the adoption of our green infrastructure plan, we started adding stormwater treatment requirements to projects, which was, I'll call it, in advance of the regional board's requirement. And so our costs that Dan has reflects that. The regional board now requires large single-family home developments to incorporate that stormwater treatment. That's effective July 1 of this year. And a lot of the jurisdictions have yet to incorporate that aspect into their fees. And so that's again, the review and the calculations, the plan reviews, the inspections of those facilities. And so there are things that we have incorporated into our grading and drainage permit that others haven't. And then other jurisdictions have other fees that we do not charge. With regards to the municipal regional permit, some of the things that we do include during the rainy season, we're required to do monthly inspections of all sites that are greater than an acre or adjacent to a water course. So we do those inspections. We have to log them. We have to report to the regional board annually on those, as well as keeping track of all of the stormwater treatment systems that are being in place. We do have a new fee that's been added related to the maintenance agreement that's required for those facilities. So thus far, we haven't charged for that either. And so that's a perpetual maintenance agreement that's required for the stormwater treatment facilities. And that agreement ultimately gets recorded onto the property.
Is that a one-time fee or annual fee?
That will be a one-time fee, but we are required on a periodic basis they are required annually to provide us with documentation with regards to their maintenance activities and system inspection. We are required to report to the board that we've inspected at least 20% of all of the sites throughout town on an annual basis with a target of inspecting all of them once every 5 years. We've been averaging a higher inspection rate because we haven't had that many installed, but that's probably going to ebb down as more and more of these things are installed.
and is that requirement, that inspection requirement based on a minimum amount of retainage or
No,
detention?
so the stormwater permit requires that any project, non-single family, development.
Non-single family.
So they have two categories. They have general development, which is not related to single family. They hadn't regulated a single family house up until July 1 of this year. But subdivisions would fall under that category, commercial development, which we don't really have, but we have stuff at the schools which did trigger that stuff. So the threshold for that used to be 10,000, and in the current permit term, it dropped down to a create or replace 5,000 square feet or more of impervious area.
Any single family with 5,000?
Not a single family, a subdivision, work at one of the private schools, a site like this one. The threshold used to be 10,000, it's now 5,000.
And what is it, what's the July 1 requirement?
For the
single
July
family?
1 of this year, they added single-family development projects. And that is with a create or replace of 10,000 square feet or more.
10,000 square feet of
Of
impervious.
impervious surface, which a large majority of our full site development projects trigger. And so when we started our green infrastructure plan requirement, it was with the forethought that that would roughly be about the threshold that was targeted. The differences between what we had and the new permit are we limited it to full site development. So if somebody was doing 10,000 square feet, but they still had their main house there, we didn't require it. But the regional board doesn't have that accommodation. The second thing that the regional board requires that we didn't, because we only looked at the full site, is that if that 10,000 square feet is 50% or more of the impervious area on the site, they have to retrofit their site to have all of that water treated.
Wait, when you say water treated, this is water that's going into a detention system?
So detention just slows it down.
Say that again?
Detention just slows the water down. So the water is held for a little bit to allow the peak of the storm to go, and then they slowly discharge that water at the pre-development rate. Stormwater treatment is stuff like our biotreatment basins where the water is actually filtered before it leaves. And so they're complementary, but they're a little different.
So where it's filtered like ours, it theoretically, you could have a impervious basin that would allow the water to.
You could have a pervious basin.
Pervious basin to allow the water to sink down
percolate.
into the water table?
Yes, that's one of the allowable things. But a lot of our areas are clay, and so water doesn't percolate well.
And those
And
things,
so that for a lot of sites doesn't work.
and they get filled up, and I think more maintenance, regular maintenance, flushing them out needs to take place. And I don't think the town has any method of inspecting these.
Not
detention-
that kind of maintenance, no.
Right, right. And so the
Not if it's
effectiveness,
pervious, but if
the
they're
effectiveness
impervious,
of
we.
the-
No, okay. If you have a detention system on your property,
right, because.
we don't come by and
they're-
visit you every year and say, did you maintain it?
Oh, you don't?
We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
But-
stormwater treatment systems like the biobasins and stuff, we are required by our Regional Water Quality Control Board permit to inspect each one at least once every 5 years. They say that and say basically inspect 20%
The
so that you can get
bioswales.
around. But we've done a bit more than that.
Okay,
So I hope that provides a little bit of context as to why our fees may be a little bit higher than some of the neighbors, and I'm happy to provide some offline additional information for some
I mean,
comparison.
the one thing you said that jumps out at me is the hauling fee, is that other people are charging for hauling. We aren't, we're kind of incorporating that into this.
B.
Well, we're gonna, in the contract with Green Waste, we said that.
Mr.
they
Oranges.
would
Yeah.
get a-
No, but he's.
No, I'm not
talking
I'm not talking about garbage hauling.
To
I'm talking
haul.
about when somebody digs out their
Dirt.
Of,
basement.
Yeah.
Grading and
When somebody digs out their basement and has to take all that
Oh, he's
material
talking
off site.
dirt.
Yeah,
we had a little issue with double charging our residents for off-haul fees.
Road
and
impact.
Road impact fee.
Road
Road
impact,
impact fee.
road impact fees and, yeah, yeah.
We're not considering that. That's why Carol's not here.
Right.
But we could have a hauling fee,
We could.
but we just can't have a road impact fee.
Right, else Carol will be here
I think,
suing us.
I think Dan's got one more slide and then,
Yes, these are my recommendations. They're pretty standard recommendations for me. The first one is to set policies with targets for cost recovery for each department. And then charge fees for services accordingly. You all are quite free to approach this in any way you find appropriate. My own recommendation is to give your staff a policy decision as opposed to going through each individual fee and suggest change this, change that, do this, do that. My recommendation is always provide these two guys here a general policy recommendation and let them work out with the actual fee on it. Second thing, identify costs to be recovered. Do you want to recover all of the direct costs, which is be essentially labor, as well as some services and supplies? Do you want to recover indirect costs? And those are costs such as the townwide overhead, customer service, any department admin administration, and then customer support costs as well.
Which is what we were talking about.
Yeah. I find that when towns take that approach, that in general, they end up with greater cost recovery. And again, this is just me, it's a little bit of my bias, but general observation is that those towns that get closer to full cost recovery end up with the ability to provide a higher level of customer service. And that customer service can be having staff at a counter. That customer service can often be technology and providing, updated technology that oftentimes your customers will be ahead of you on. My standard example is electronic plans submission. I have, for whatever reason, my clients in Oregon, they've been on electronic plan submission for their building plan and plan checks for 15 years. I've had clients in California that are just saying, yeah, we're just now thinking, looking at that. And, so my bias is to include it as much as we reasonably can, because in the end, you will be providing a higher level of service to your constituents. Thirdly, adjust fees annually based on some kind of a CPI factor, and we've discussed that already. Fourth, complete a thorough analysis of user fees every 3 to 5 years, like we're doing now. Those are my standard recommendations. I'll pretty much provide everything.
Great.
Well done. Yeah.
So then I'll take any other questions.
The number
Thank you.
crunching.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Diana?
So if we end tonight, what will be the next steps? How do we get the information to George about our opinions on the cost recovery in the various categories?
George said that you would give it to him in your one-on-one.
So he's going to collect individually from each of us and then put it in the staff report. Is that what he said?
yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There are no other questions? We're done. So we
Thank
have
you.
A motion.
Thank you. I
Okay, we
move
have
to
a motion
adjourn. I move to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. And
Good
thank you very
guys.
much. Great job.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, anybody want to second it?
I don't think we need to.